Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Gina Grillo, president of the Advertising Club, and I hope that you're continuing to stay healthy and productive during this time. Our webinars have really got some momentum going, and it makes all of us at the Advertising Club feel really good about that. So please help us to continue to identify topics that you'd like to discuss, because we are really holding true to our commitment to providing a platform to our members and supporting our colleagues from all backgrounds. Today, we're collaborating with our corporate member, Ogury, to talk about how mobile and behavioral trends will impact marketing plans going forward. I'd like to introduce Evan Rutchik, CRO USA of Ogury. Take it over.
Great, thank you, Gina. And thank you everyone at the Ad Club. We're super excited to be partners with everyone. Today, I am going to be discussing mobile user behavior trends within the broader consumer electronics vertical. But before I jump into the content, I just want to give a quick overview of who Ogury is for those that might be unfamiliar. Founded in 2014, we are the creator of the first advertising engine driven by user choice. Our engine is fundamentally built on user consent and preferences towards data sharing and ad experiences. Ultimately, we're using unique, reliable mobile user and behavior data from over 400 million consented profiles globally. And we're using our purpose-built algorithms to deliver relevant, innovative, choice-driven video and high-impact ads to those users. Of course, I'm more than happy to share more about Ogury at a later time for anyone who might be interested. Okay, but for now, let's just get into this. Today, I'm going to kick it off by discussing the current consumer electronics landscape. I'll also take a specific case and highlight a specific persona among the various wireless carriers. And after that, I'll take a look ahead at the future behaviors of the consumer electronics shopper. And then we're going to end on a virtual chat with Karna Crawford, the head of consumer media strategy and activation at Verizon, and Marissa Kukuru, head of global media at Bose. And I'm extremely excited for this panel. I think it's going to be a great one. All right, before I jump into sharing a look at Ogury's insights, I just want to take a broader look at the consumer electronics industry today. And as I'm sure you're all very aware, there's been a pretty significant increase in demand for consumer electronics. And as you can see here on the slide, many major US publications have really shared their views on this surge in sales. With people spending more and more time at home, communication has become virtual, and of course, our reliance on technology has skyrocketed. I mean, look at the webinars that we're doing today. But what does this sales increase actually look like? So the NDP group shared that back in May, sales of US consumer electronics actually jumped 23% year over year. And with the current state of the economy and the downturn generally of consumer spending, this figure is pretty huge in that context. It's even more impressive actually when you compare it to the rest of the retail industry. eMarketer actually shared that 2020 e-commerce sales of computer and consumer electronics will reach over $156 billion. And this is significantly more than any other retail category out there. The online purchases of consumer electronics is also massive and had a massive impact, I think, on our device usage, right? How did our usage actually ultimately change with this information? And a report by the Global Web Index actually revealed that after COVID-19 came out, or the outbreak happened, there was actually a 40% increase in mobile usage, which is more than any other device. So we get the idea, right? We know that people are purchasing more consumer electronics, and we know that they're using their mobile device more than ever. But what does the shift in digital behavior actually look like? And how does this impact the various wireless carriers as well? So to get this better understanding of the various carrier personas, we ran an advanced custom persona study, which is one of our proprietary studies. And before I dive into the findings, just to give you an overview of the Ogury Active Insights tool and our advanced custom persona, Ogury is collecting traceable and trusted user consent through our CPMP, our consent and preference management platform, Once we get that consent, we start to gather consented signals from multiple sources. Our algorithms are actually transforming these signals into what I described before as our unique and reliable data, which is giving us this reliable understanding of the mobile user. And this is providing us a pretty clear view of the installed apps, the usage of the apps, the websites browsed, and demographics. And we're taking that data and we're fueling our Active Insights platform, which is the studies and the tool we're going to walk through today. Then, of course, we're able to leverage this information and data and extrapolate it in a way to create pretty effective targeting campaigns. And the Advanced Custom Persona is a study within our Active Insights suite that actually uncovers the demographic breakdown of these specific audiences, plus can shed some light on the interests and discriminant behaviors of these users as well. And then a little more context into the methodology of this particular study. So the carriers that we analyzed were AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, and Verizon. And the first step we took to conduct this study was to isolate users by their specific wireless provider across a one-year time frame. So we looked at June 19 through May 2020. We ran our Advanced Custom Persona study to really identify the behaviors of each of these individual groups. And then the final step is for us to leverage these insights to understand where users are spending their time, how behaviors may have shifted, and what messaging, would actually resonate with those particular users. All right, so jumping into it, we start here by looking at the demographics by carrier. And what we found is that wireless carriers attract essentially a similar composition of women and men. Users within similar age brackets are attracted to AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint, while Verizon's users skew a little bit older than the other carriers. And the red shading in these boxes represents over-indexing versus the general population percentage. Now here we're looking at a breakdown by region or by state. And as you can see, the US footprint actually differs quite dramatically depending on the carrier. AT&T and T-Mobile have the strongest representation in California, in Texas, and other parts of the Southeast, whereas Sprint and Verizon have slightly similar footprints, with Verizon having a stronger foothold on the Midwest and actually parts of the South. And demographics are important to note, but what I actually find most fascinating are actually the interests of each carrier's persona group. And we found that despite each carrier's fairly large user base within the study, each of the groups is distinctly different from one another. From a category standpoint, AT&T and Verizon appear to have the most similar users, with both groups over-indexing for owning news, sports, and travel apps. But when you take a closer look, something actually suggests otherwise, right? Despite sharing these similar interests, the app type by category is actually quite different. Within the sports category, as just an example, AT&T users are interested in sports news, whereas in Verizon's case, the users are more interested in code-specific content. So there are some variations even within these individual categories. So what does this information actually reveal about the carrier persona, right? So in the interest of time, I'm not going to go into the full analysis of each carrier. And I'm chatting with Karna, who's the head of consumer strategy, media strategy, and activation at Verizon pretty soon. So I won't go too into that carrier for now. Maybe we can get her to reveal some info for us. But for now, I'll just sort of focus on AT&T. So, okay, quick reminder of the demographic and geographic and interest breakdown of AT&T. Here you go. What actually makes this group unique? AT&T users actually prefer free versus premium entertainment platforms and national versus local news. We thought that was kind of interesting. And they're frequently using Walmart grocery. And if you look up and they're constantly looking up local business information via apps like Yellow Pages, right? The most discriminant apps and sites, right? The apps that are most indicative and relevant to these particular users reveal that some of the users may actually be Cricket wireless consumers accessing the AT&T network through unlocked phones, while other apps like VMOX suggest users may actually be bilingual Spanish speakers. Okay. To quickly summarize this group, right? AT&T users are split evenly between men and women who are mainly between the ages of 25 to 54. They enjoy streaming TV, staying on top of news, sports headlines, and are pretty keen mobile gamers. And their mobile usage actually suggests that they are likely multicultural, with a large percentage coming from Cricket's prepaid offering. And as I mentioned, we have also summarized the other three carrier personas. And if you are interested in this information, please feel free to reach out to me, and I absolutely will be happy to share it with you. Okay, now let's conclude with some insights just about the consumer electronics shopper, and then I'll look ahead at the future of the vertical. So in order to really predict the future behaviors, we need to look at previous and current behaviors in order to really understand the nuances of what could make a consumer electronic users unique and what can really predict what they might do next. In this screenshot, you can see a snapshot of an app universe. And this is part of our Active Insights tool. And this ultimately reveals which other apps Best Buy app users also engage with, to give you a better idea of their behaviors. We use Best Buy as the case here, thinking of the consumer electronics category and that shopper mentality where they might go to buy something. And as you can see, these users are in the market for a car, right? They have connected home apps. They are furniture shopping, home renovators, and they're doing some online banking. And this might reveal a particular life stage that they might be at, right? This is, again, a snapshot in time of these users. And we can also see that they're avid gamers and they're tech enthusiasts, and they're also content streamers. And this showcases the emergence of some key consumer electronics personas that we really need to better understand. So I pulled another one of our advanced custom persona studies by inputting the apps and sites that align with the tech enthusiast, the avid gamer, and seasoned streamer, to really better understand their nuances and behavioral shifts over the last few months. So starting with demographics again, the tech enthusiasts skew pretty evenly between male and female, only slightly skewing more male, with 42% of users between the ages of 25 to 44 years old. And the avid gamer actually skews more heavily male, close to 70%, and 62% of them are below 34 years old. Right? And the seasoned streamer skews slightly more female, also skews a bit older, with 49% above the age of 45. So clear differences within. And if we compare their interests, we can determine interest by looking at the categories for which this persona own more apps than the general population. So the top interest category of the tech enthusiast is food and drink, with these users 1.6 times more likely than the general population to own, as an example, the Taco Bell app. Another high interest category is personal finance, with these users almost twice as likely than the general population to own the budgeting app Mint. And then the avid gamers' top interest categories is careers, and they're over 3 times more likely than the general population to own freelance services apps, as an example, Fiverr. And they're also interested in online dating and are almost 3 times more likely than the general population to own Hinge. And then finally, the seasoned streamer, unsurprisingly, television is the top interest category for these users, who are 5.3 times more likely than the general population to actually own the Comedy Central app, and 1.9% more likely to own the Com app. So they're mindful. Now we understand their interests, right, based on the app ownership, and we can then go a little bit more into detail, I'd say, around their discriminant behaviors based on the actual app and site engagement over the last few months. The tech enthusiasts actually show a higher affinity and reach to entertainment outlets like Sony Rewards, Entertainment TV Online, and TV.com. And the avid gamers, you can see, show an affinity or reach to energy drink brands, including G Fuel, IT sites, including Tom's Hardware and Science, news sites, including Live Science. Interesting. And finally, the seasoned streamer also engages with news content like The Observer and NBC News. And so knowing the behavior of Best Buy users, in addition to these persona nuances, marketers can actually leverage these insights and this information to identify users' needs and ultimately predict their future behaviors. And then a couple predictions that we're making based on the data is that, first, we found that users that engage with consumer electronic retailers such as Best Buy are also engaging with content that indicates a life change, right? Such as buying a car, or maybe they're decorating a new house. And then the Times reported that over 420,000 New Yorkers had actually left the city between March and May in reaction to the pandemic. And it's reported that actually many of those people plan to return after the summer. So with that said, one of our predictions is that there will be a strong likelihood of a surge in sales in more consumer electronics in September as people adjust to their new home, their new environment, their new surroundings. On the other side, our second prediction is that we actually saw a spike in active usage on non-essential retail apps the day after the April tax return deadline. And then again, we saw a spike 2 weeks later. So knowing this, and with a new tax deadline of July 15th, yesterday, we predict there will be a spike 2 weeks after this deadline. Therefore, we're encouraging our partners to really heavy up on targeting and increasing their share of voice during the week of July 27th, predicting there will be a spike similarly to the one that happened back in April. There really are so many other things I could share, and so many other predictions we're making and sharing with our clients. But I really want to jump into the panel, so I'm going to leave it with these three takeaways. Okay, first is that despite the halt on retail spending, consumer electronics has seen a surge in sales, thanks to our behaviors becoming increasingly digital, right? And these behaviors will continue being digital. Therefore, it will continue to be a huge opportunity for marketers in the CE vertical. And secondly, if you want to understand the CE shopper, you really need to understand and access unique, reliable mobile data in order to really truly understand the nuances and differences between these personas. It's critical to have that level of understanding and granularity. And third, if you really want to reach them effectively, you should be implementing impactful, we believe, of course, impactful mobile branding experiences that are driven by user choice, right? And we're going to dig a bit more into this in our discussion. But for now, I'm going to unshare my screen. All right, let me introduce our panelists. Karna Crawford of Verizon, head of consumer media strategy and activation. Thank you for joining us. And then Marissa Kukuru, if you could join us as well on your screen here, head of consumer media for Bose. So thank you both so much for joining us. I'd love it if we could just start out with both of you. Maybe we'll start with Karna, since we just went pretty deep into the telco space there. If you could start just by introducing yourself as well, tell us something about you, and then pass it over to Marissa, and we can get started.
Hi, I'm Karna Crawford, hunkering down here in West New York, New Jersey. I lead media and activation for the consumer group at Verizon. I've been there for about 2 years, and I am super excited to have this chat today.
Great. I'm Marissa Kukuru. I lead the global media planning and strategy for Bose Consumer Electronics and Health Division, and I am in sunny Gloucester, Massachusetts. And very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I'll ask you both one more question. Okay. What is your favorite item that you have bought while in lockdown? Right? And ideally, actually, no, nothing ideal. You go ahead. Answer that question first.
So I'm going to give two. And if my team's watching, they're going to laugh. One of my favorite items I bought on lockdown was a whiteboard, because I am incapable of having cohesive thoughts without being able to visualize them. And I was writing on my windows, so I bought a whiteboard. And the second is a new coffee maker, because mine was 20 years old and died.
Nice.
Lovely. Lovely. Need that coffee during this.
Mine are, I'll do two as well. Mine, I just got into that whole air fryer world, which people are really into. So we got an air fryer and it's been great. And I'm not gonna lie, I've been trying all of the various hard seltzers while on lockdown, and White Claw is still my favorite.
That's awesome. Yeah, one of our VPs in the East, Glenn Pape, hopefully he's on here. The guy, he's a big whiteboard guy too. I'll give you mine. Yeah, you guys can share. Exactly. On mine, I actually bought a water bottle that tells me when I should be drinking water. So it's I thought it was kind of crazy at first, but it's been a great.
Has it worked?
Great thing. It has worked. In fact, it's flashing right now. It's saying to drink some water. So I might take a break and take a sip in a second. Okay. Another question for you both. We're more dependent on both our wireless carriers and our electronic devices than ever before. Do you believe there will be a permanent impact on the consumer electronics vertical? Or is this more so just a temporary shift given the current climate? So maybe we'll start with Marissa on this question.
Sure. So I believe the latest stats say 3.5 billion people worldwide have smartphones, and that's expected, at least even before COVID, to go up somewhere around 8 to 10% next year. So I do not think we're moving away from certainly any of our devices. 3/4 of people say that they'd rather lose their wallet than their phone, and I am 100% aligned to that. I cannot live my life without my phone. So I don't think we're moving away. You know, we don't know what we don't know. So there could be more technologies that will come that we're not privy to or aware of right now. But for now, tech for sure, mobile, all here to stay and continue to get bigger. I actually am embarrassed how often I get those little alerts that say, your usage is up by 10% week over week. And it's like, you're averaging 7.5 hours on your phone. I don't know how that's happening.
Don't judge me, device. Don't judge me.
Exactly. Please shut up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Marissa's absolutely right. I think there are a couple things that reinforce that. What's going on right now and over the past few months, we all now know through our businesses that it effectively is our new normal, at least for the rest of this year, which means that when you think about all the guidance you read about new habits and what it takes to form a habit, a lot of what we're experiencing now is effectively us forming new habits. So I think just behaviors are now solidifying into permanency. So some of that is going to stay no matter what. You couple that with the fact that from a business perspective, a lot of the things that we've had to do to pivot in COVID were things that all of us had on our horizon, but may have had on a longer trajectory, and it forced us to make those changes faster, right? So a lot of us may not have been prepared for quite the pace of digital sales and digital servicing that was required to operate our businesses at this scale of online purchasing. Now we've made pivots, we've made investments, we've changed things that are inherently going to mean that that is how we operate in the future. Will it stay at the exact same ratio between online and offline? Will the amount of content and the scale of that content consumption stay where it is post-COVID, when we can all actually go to real events and be in live experiences, et cetera? Probably won't stay exactly the same, but I think it is definitely from a trajectory perspective, this is a lot of this is a permanent change, I think, for our categories.
Super interesting. And you brought it up. I mean, one of the question that's on a lot of people's minds is, you know, what types, if you can give more detail, it'd be great, but what types of strategic shifts have you made with your budgets? What types of new audiences or targeting have you shifted to in this time period?
Yeah, I think just continuing on, I wouldn't say that there's necessarily been a change in targeting per se.
Okay.
I think for us, thinking about it as a total business, where we've really been focusing on is how do we ensure that we are supporting our customers, making it clear how you can buy online, that it can be easy to buy online, and to ensure that we are enabling effective servicing to them online. So when you then think about that from an end-to-end media perspective, we are a critical part of how we're helping both existing customers and prospects be aware of those things in order to know that we are here to support them to deliver the needs that they need, whether it's needs of new devices, new accessories like some Bose headphones off of the Verizon wireless site, or servicing challenges. A lot of what our focus has been on is enabling consumers and then ensuring that they're aware of that enablement.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think something Karna said just a few minutes ago too about making moves that are just happening a lot faster is definitely happening for our business as well. we were looking to become more focused on different customer segments and whatnot as part of this year's overall plans. But as things happen, as you need to make adjustments, you do need to affect those much faster. And I would say in terms of strategic shifts of how we're approaching things, one other big area has been being very nimble and being able to pivot quickly when things change. So, historically, I would say we have a plan and then we have a few backup options if something falls through, but nothing crazy. Now we have a plan and then we have plan B, C, D, E, and F in case everything else changes, because there's so much in flux right now.
And how does that apply to beyond just targeting, but maybe different messaging? Are you approaching messaging in a different way, addressing the different frame, context and mindset of a consumer differently?
I would say for sure we're again also having backup plans, and right now we're shooting for the fall and we're doing 2 different shoots at the same time to have a variety of messaging so that we can be very nimble. I would say also, there's just been so much happening with the US, with the world, that we want to be able to react and be able to speak to what is happening in a very empathetic and sympathetic way. So we quickly pulled together messaging around COVID-19 that was very relevant to being able to hear your neighbors more. And we pulled that together in about 10 days, which is huge for, generally speaking, being able to pull together a creative campaign takes months. And, now having to do that very quickly, but just being able to be reactionary and hopefully be proactive, even more so in anticipation of what is going to happen.
I 100% agree, Marissa, and I will point to, for Verizon, something that we did, which was introduce Pay It Forward Live, which was our live concert and live entertainment platform, which, similarly to what Marissa described, went from did not exist at all to up and live at a minimum of 2 days a week in a matter of 10 to 14 days between when we concepted the idea and had the first live streamed concert activity. And it was very much tied to what are we identifying as the need of consumers in the marketplace. And one of them was all live had basically just disappeared. The world was straining under the intensity of society. And then at the same time, we had these small businesses extremely suffering. So we introduced this platform, to her point, in a matter of quick turn, which fundamentally then now is informing choices we're making about live events and streamed events for the back half of the year because of what we learned through this content creation and pivoting quickly based on consumer needs.
Interesting. And are you seeing the same ROI or similar ROI that you would with these digital events versus maybe large scale live events?
I don't think it's a one-to-one comparison, specifically from a Pay It Forward Live perspective versus, we may not have had an NBA tournament. The reality is it is such a different thing that I would not expect them to deliver the same ROI because they had different objectives and intents in that moment. But I do think that, what all of us are grappling with for the back half of the year is we still aren't going to have as much live as we would expect, and how that live manifests is going to be very different. And so our ROI off of those deals and those relationships will be different. And therefore, what is our new calibration of what success looks like when we create, these virtual live events and these hybrid experiences? What's the new KPI? What are the new ROI standards and metrics associated with that? And then on top of that, how is the experience ensuring that it's enhancing the lives of our consumers?
It's great. I mean, talking about experience, talking about consumers, talking about choice. One of the things that we talk a lot about is giving consumers choice and control over how they interact with brands or publishers or content by sharing data, as one example, what they're willing to share. And also how they want to engage with an advertiser in a specific ad or a specific advertiser. So what types of stuff are you guys doing in order to ensure that consumers have this level of control? right? With CCPA, and of course, if you're working abroad with GDPR, but with CCPA, it's more and more of a requirement and expectation that consumers have some semblance of this. So how are you approaching it with your businesses?
Yeah, I think it's all about being very upfront and honest about all the privacy rules and regulations and making sure that customers are feeling comfortable. It's, we have made it was more in Europe where it came forth quite a bit, but we have explicit consent models for all of our site users. We're following all the guidelines everywhere in terms of being compliant. And then we're working with partners like Ogury, who are great partners that are super transparent and make sure that consumers are opting in for the data to be shared, and knowing that the purpose of giving your data up is so that the content shared back to you is relevant and you care about it. Because there's nothing worse than seeing content after content or ads that you don't care about at all. I'd rather see ads all day that I want, or products or brands or content that is something I care about or I'm interested in. So I think consumers know that, but it's all about just making sure that all sides, both the publisher side, the brand side, the consumers know that what our intent is and that we're being upfront and honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Marissa's spot on. When we think about Verizon, our brand is rooted in two core pillars: trust and innovation. So data security and privacy are kind of critical pinnacles inside of our trust pillar. So when this situation came up, we were already, had been down the pathway of the role of trust. What we know as a mobile provider is that customers expect that we have their data. They expect that we know a lot about them. What they care the most about is our transparency and their ability to feel confident that their data is secured. And so from a transparency perspective, one of the things that we did back in January was introduce a consumer data dashboard, which is exactly what Marissa was kind of describing, this idea of one single source place that a consumer can go in and make the choices and decisions and have visibility into the data and how that data is being used, et cetera. And that just introduces a very clean, easy transparency mechanism that is only one of many tools and services that we both have as well as are rolling out. I think that for me, what's most important is how we are continuing to help consumers understand that exists for them. Mm-hmm. Because there are the people who are doing it because they're forced to, and there are those of us who are doing it because it's the right thing to do. The onus in some ways ends up being on us to help consumers know that transparency exists, so that they can feel trust, they can feel safe, and they can feel confident.
So the onus in your example is on the brands. You think the brands take the responsibility in educating the consumers on this, or specifically for your own data sharing practices?
I think not just the brands, but I think, for us as a business, we try to be a responsible business provider. And mm-hmm. So we believe that as a responsible business provider, we need to ensure that we are providing those tools and those resources and enabling consumers to access those easily without it feeling non-transparent and forced.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, agreed. At the end of the day, if you're starting to get backlash or anything, it's going to come back to the brand no matter what. So we want to make sure that everything that we're doing and everything our partners are doing are, by the book, transparent, et cetera. The worst is anytime you have situations where it's just not. You're looking like your hands are in the cookie jar a little bit, and it's like, that's not what's happening. So better to have it be owned by you and control everything that you can control.
Absolutely.
Understood. All right, let's talk a little more about the mobile ad experience, right? So I mentioned a massive shift to mobile. It means there's more and more user engagement in mobile, more time spent. Do you think that the industry has adapted to this shift in media consumption? Specifically in terms of, I'd say, the different formats that are available and even some level of standardization. Karna, I don't know if you want to take that one first.
I think that we all acknowledge that mobile has grown, but I think we are far from in an ideal world. I saw a stat recently, which isn't dissimilar to one that you showed earlier, that 40% of e-commerce last year occurred on a mobile device. If I look at our stats, an overwhelming majority of our traffic is coming from a mobile device, but I wouldn't say that I could point to any non-D2C brands that I think are just absolutely stellar at mobile is the norm mentality. And then I feel like when you look at the ad formats and capabilities, as well as the standardization of both those formats and the data and measurement capabilities on the backside, they have not caught up to consumer consumption by any means. So we are still lagging in our adoption of a number of things as it relates to mobile, partially because we have to pivot our mindset to truly put it at the foundation, and then partially because the resources and capabilities are not fully matured to deliver it at its full intent.
Could not agree more. I absolutely think that there's so much still to be done to get us to a place where, one, the creative and ad formats are much more user-friendly. You're not having those accidental thumb clicks and whatnot. But then also from a measurement perspective, for sure, I think that we're still quite a ways behind. So hopefully somebody can solve these quickly, because I think that it will be a big moneymaker. So for everybody listening.
Yeah, opportunities, entrepreneurial opportunities.
Exactly.
I will say, Evan, that
Yeah.
the offering that you guys have and the way that you have your positive opt-in data access will help people like me and Marissa in the future when you continue to move to a cookieless world. So it is a step in the right direction of mobile becoming a part of the standard and the norm. The question is, how do we make that across more capabilities and properties versus as a standard versus, and that obviously comes with a lot of issues and risks associated with it and connections and relationships to SDKs. But the reality is we have to figure it out because we have to keep scaling. And the only way we can do that is for the collapsing of that value chain in order to allow us to do that.
Great. Super interesting. Okay, this is a question out of my own curiosity. Maybe some of the people on here are curious as well. How are your vendors and partners addressing you differently, right? Have you noticed that salespeople may have changed their communication style, or there's like a common email subject you're seeing lately, which is like, enough of this already? Like, how has that side of your life in business changed during this situation? Either one of you can jump right in if you have it.
I haven't seen any sort of standard email outreach or subject lines or anything like that, but I will say that there have been a couple. It hasn't been a lot, but there have been a couple that have been sending, for example, like daily or weekly virtual workout classes, just to sort of stay top of mind. They're like, maybe you don't do bar, so here's a bar class, or maybe you don't do, a strength class, here's a strength class. And I do think it's kind of one of those things that just keeps you top of mind as part of your inbox. Like, I'm not trying to sell you anything crazy. It's just more saying, hey, hoping I can help in a small way, which I think is an interesting and nice approach. And then others, I think, because so much is happening so quickly, the partners that have been reaching out with white papers and research and data that are showing, the shifts in consumer behavior so fast, that's been super, super helpful, because, it's so hard to stay on top of these things. And we are only seeing it, usually that type of research takes months. And being able to see them quickly has been very helpful to help us shift our strategies.
Yeah, I echo the point on the classes, and I'll say when we were back in March and this all first happened, there were a handful of partners that were very quick to reach out to check on my team, to provide access to a number of different things associated with personal wellness and childcare and all these types of things. And it was just such an amazing focus on people versus hitting their quarterly number that I thought was an absolute amazing thing in a time where everybody was uncertain, everybody was stressed, and everybody was emotional. I think when I think about themes, I haven't seen any consistent headlines other than people just pulling from external headlines and placing them into the headlines. But what I have seen themes of is a lot more solution selling. Obviously, every sales organization says that they are solution sellers, but not all of them actually practice it consistently all the time. I've found that more people are reaching out from a solution selling mindset and bringing ideas that are about solutions, not about their ad sales packages, which makes it easier for our team in a world where they need to make quick pivots and quick decisions because what's being brought to them is more relevant to the types of things that they need to deliver. Now, obviously, Verizon is a very large advertiser, so a lot of our partners already know a lot of our priorities and kind of keep things inside of that. So it's really about how they flip the switch to use that information to provide what was going to be valuable.
That's great. That's great advice. All right, I've got one more question and then we'll go to a Q&A. We're currently in the midst of the back to school shopping period, or we're about to hit it anyways, which means we're about to begin thinking about our holiday media planning too. All right, so how do you think that COVID-19 will impact holiday spending? And what have you been doing differently when it comes to planning for these major seasonal events? Karna, you're on my screen, so I'll go to you first.
So I'm gonna answer this question purely through Karna's personal lens with no data or fact behind it. So I'm putting my appropriate caveats out there. I think that in many ways, the world needs moments of celebration and moments of joy. And so I think there's going to be an aspect of the holiday season where people may be more choiceful, but they're not going to not spend. Because I think that people need that reprieve for themselves, for their kids. They need that moment. So do I think there's going to be some contraction? Sure, by default there has to be, because there are 40 million people in America out of jobs, so they physically do not have as much money. But I think of the money that people have, I think they are going to try to spend it to be able to enhance their families' lives and celebrate. And so we're planning through the lens of how do we just ensure that, as I said before, that we're enabling our customers, we're making it easy for them, and that we're providing them with the products and the offerings that are going to delight them in the holiday season.
I think you're spot on. I totally agree. The only thing I would probably add to that is each year we see that holiday spending is getting earlier and earlier. Yeah. And I would imagine that it probably will continue to do so even more this year, because people might be a little bit tighter on their own personal budgets. And they might say, I'm going to space this out a bit more, starting in, gosh, I don't even know, maybe September, to just try and make sure that they can bring that joy. They can bring some big excitement around the holidays, but are still being very mindful of what's going on.
I think that's a great build.
Marissa, because I'm curious, what are the top Bose products these days?
Thanks, Evan. I love that question. So we have our Headphone 700s out now, which are over-the-ear noise canceling headphones. They've been out for about a year, but it is no surprise. We announced a while ago that we will have a new wireless in-ear noise canceling product very soon. So everyone keep your eyes out for that. I'm super excited about.
I want a pair of those.
Absolutely. I got to replace this junk I have in my ear right now.
Yes, please do. So we've got that. We have our frames product. So for those who like to be on the go, we've got sunglasses with audio built into the bands, and they're incredible. I know you might.
I feel like I saw those at CES.
You probably did, yes. If you haven't seen them or tried them, you're probably like, how does this work? But our engineers are the most brilliant people on the planet, and they have found a way so that the audio goes just to you. So unless you're sitting next to someone and you have it as the loudest level it could possibly be, they won't hear it. So you can take phone calls, you can listen to music, podcasts, whatever you want on there. So those are really awesome. And then of course we've got a wide range of both portable and home speakers that I can't say enough about. So lots of good stuff.
Awesome. All right, so now we'll open it up to Q&A from anyone who's on this. So please input your questions now, and we'll start to ask as they come in. The first one that came in is in a cookieless future. So we kind of already alluded to it a little bit, but in a cookieless future, how are you going to target users, right? And what are you doing now that can set the foundation for this cookieless future?
I can jump in.
Sure.
So I would say for cookieless environments, first party data, we'll still be able to utilize contextual targeting and being just very relevant. That's a big part of our strategy anyways, contextual targeting based off of the product or the product use cases. And then IP addresses. From an IP address standpoint, you can definitely do more sequential, and there are ways. I mean, I don't, let's be real, it's not going to be super simple, and I think it will take some getting used to, but there are ways to do it, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I agree with Marissa. There are some things that have already made a step in that direction. I think we are still waiting for the big silver bullet that's going to be our solution to the no cookie world, because it's hard to move people like us. It's hard to change us. So I think we are waiting for what's the alternative at scale that can be unified across everything we do versus tied specifically to individual partners. Not that we don't love those individual partners, Evan, but I think we'll figure it out because we're a nimble group and we all want to drive growth, and we've moved into being an audience world. So it'll get figured out, but I think that all the tech ventures, I'd really appreciate it if you could push some money towards it so you can figure it out faster.
Great. All right, here's another question. We know sports fans are still engaging with sports content, even without live sports. That said, with the major sports about to start or restart their seasons, how would you react as sports investors or sponsors? How would you react if they have to halt play? Would you pivot away, or would you find ways to stick with it?
So I would say, this is a little bit of a tough question to answer, because I think that our largest partner from a sports perspective is the NFL, and the NFL will do what they can to find a way. The draft was a perfect example of that. Even though the draft was a completely different format than it had ever been in the past, they still found a way to do it. So we were big with them around the draft. It was kind of, I don't want to say it was a nice thing, because there's, there are good things that are coming out of all of this, all of COVID. But one thing that was great was we were able to use our headphones as the communication device for the draft. So it ended up working out pretty well for Bose. For the future, if there is a time where there's not going to be games, I think that there are still ways to activate, because we've built such we've built such strong coordination and conjunction with the NFL that we could still tap into the players, the teams, showcase how it's coming to life and how they're using our products in more of a lifestyle perspective. So I don't know if we would pivot away. I think it would be just pivoting the way that we do it.
Yep, 100%. So similarly to Marissa's team, we did the same thing together with them in the draft and enabling the draft cams and things like that. And I think it was the first of those forced pivots that we were talking about earlier in the conversation. It probably came sooner than we would have otherwise preferred. But I think that as we look at the back half, sports are core and fundamental to who we are and to the passions of our consumers. So pivoting away from sports is not necessarily in the direction in the near term. Instead, it's about how are we retooling the relationships that we have to make sure that those relationships and those activations can enable sports in its new form, whether it's totally live, live with or without fans, hybrid live, etc.
Awesome. All right, great. Here's another question that I think is pretty interesting. Do you expect companies to offer deeper discounts to accommodate for unemployed consumers? And then the second part of this, is Black Friday an event that you are concerned about with a lack of in-person shopping?
Deeper discounts, I'm not sure about. I can't speak to how the rest of, I can't really even speak to what our promos are going to look like this year yet. So, you know, I'm not sure if there'll be deeper discounts. I'm sure a lot of people will be shopping for discounts. So that might come into play. But that is a really great question that I honestly I don't even want to guess at right now. But in terms of the Black Friday shopping, I would say I'm not concerned because so many people, you know, and this is more of a personal perspective than from a Bose perspective, but so many consumers have gotten so used to shopping via e-com over the last few months. And it's basically like flipped on its head. I mean, it was already going that way, but again, to Karna's point right at the beginning of you're just making things move faster. Everybody is shopping so much more so on e-com, both direct and through reseller, that I don't think it's going to be an issue at all. The biggest thing I would say is just anticipate a little bit extra time for shipping, as what we've seen through COVID has happened, but I don't think it'll be any sort of big disruption.
I agree.
It'll be Cyber November instead of Cyber Monday, basically.
Basically, I think that Cyber 5 weekend changes form from being store on Friday, online on Monday, to it is all hybrid, all weekend, full on blast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. All right, cool. So I'll make this the last question unless something else comes in, but what brands do today will be remembered for a lifetime. It's never been more important for marketing to be empathetic, relevant, and to add value. So both of you, what marketing advice would you give to the other marketers out there today?
I would say that be customer first and know your audience, know what they care about, know what makes them really tick, because that is who you're connecting with on a daily basis. And why do they care? Why would they care about what you have to say? If you lead from a consumer point of view and really get into what you can do to help them, or why your product can make their lives better, easier, more enjoyable, I think you are naturally empathetic and you will naturally add value to their lives. I think it's just, the other thing is truly being nimble and being ready to have some backup plans, because as things shift so quickly, you know, being able to keep the customer first, but then shift it, if you can do those two things, you'll be in good shape.
So I love both of those, and in particular, your customer first one. I think the thing I would add is having purpose and being authentic. If you have a super clear purpose, it allows you to have very clear criteria for decision making, be able to move very swiftly because of that clear criteria for decision making, and that then makes you more nimble and more consistent in the things that you're doing and how you show up to consumers. In our instance, our purpose is rooted in being, really focused on how we are building the networks that move the world forward. So whether that is, it made it quick for us to come up with Pay It Forward Live, made it quick for us to come up with our plans for a draft. It's defining how we are approaching the back half. It defined how we approached the decision around our employee base and reskilling all of our, 20,000 of our employees and so on. That purpose is a mechanism for empathy, both for consumers and for the corporation.
Awesome. And your commentary got two more questions if we have a couple more minutes. So I'll go with this one first. So you talked about being nimble and having the ability to shift gears in new uncertain climate. Recognizing that marketers traditionally have test budgets, do you foresee this changing, and will you set aside more budget each year to be able to adapt to these market changes?
I haven't thought about it that way, to be honest with you. Testing is at the core of what we do. So we will always have test budgets. I'm not planning for a pandemic on multiple years. So I won't say that I'm making like a pandemic budget on the side by any means. Yeah. I think the pivots that we made had to happen at an enterprise level. They were a unique circumstance. There are things about how we operationalize that might change, but I don't necessarily see fundamental shifting to the core way that we approach things like our budgets tied to that particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Agreed. I think test and learn is super important. I don't think that it will change. I don't know if it will get bigger. It'll probably just be, with some more precision around what it is exactly that you want to test, or with, or if you want to hold. I would say that's less of a test budget, and it was more of a like contingency type plan.
Yeah.
And agreed. I am, in the hopes that this never happens again, I am never holding COVID or pandemic budgets.
Sounds good. All right. Well, that is all the questions we have. Thank you both so much for participating in this with us. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully everyone on the panel, everyone on listening and watching enjoyed it as well. Gina, I'm going to send it over to you. I know we don't have much time left, but over back to you, Gina, to wrap it up.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the incredible perspective that you brought and the insights. You're all so smart and thoughtful, and I think you gave so many takeaways for everybody tuning in, so thank you all. Next Monday, our Inspiration series is continuing, so we're going to be featuring Lee Clow at 4 p.m. Eastern, and thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a great day.